Presented by Onyx. Broadcasting from the Prairie Sportsman Studios. This week's show is brought to you by Otter Tail Country. Go to OtterTailLakesCountry.com. Show off your pride for the outdoors with new gear from the Sporting Journal Radio store. Go to SportingJournalRadio.com, click on Store, and browse our selection of hoodies, hats, mugs, and more at SportingJournalRadio.com. All right, welcome to the show. I am Bret Amundson. Thank you for tuning in on the network, by demand, SportingJournalRadio.com, or by downloading the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast, or maybe you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Instagram. I don't know why I did this giant motion into the camera. I probably scared anybody that was watching it at close range right now. In any case, we've got a lot to talk about right now. Erik Osberg is going to join us from Otter Tail Lakes Country. Erik, how you doing, man?
This is as good as I've been in a long time, Brett.
I bet you made it. The Governor's Fishing Opener. Congratulations.
Thanks, man, and appreciate you being there. And I don't think it could have gone any better. There's so many things that have to come together for it to work the way you intended it to work, and it all just came together. The boat hosts that showed up and the guests that showed up, and my boss gave it a 12 out of 10. And when your boss gives when your boss gives it a 12 out of 10, you feel like, okay. We didn't. Yeah, exactly. That was my mood on Saturday night. So thanks to everybody who was involved that made it a memorable weekend.
You know, this is the time that you ask for a raise, right? You understand that? I'm just trying to give you a little advice, friend to friend.
I appreciate that. Now might be a good time to talk about the pay schedule.
So, Erik, before we get into it a little bit more, we went up there and we were invited to be a part of it as media. I brought the camera gear. I did some fishing, and this is the video that we made during our Governor's Fishing Opener. Right here. Here we go. Found it. We're en route to the Governor's Fishing Opener. I got Tiny and Mika along for the ride, and a fully loaded pickup truck. We were headed to Otter Tail County for the Governor's Fishing Opener that was supposed to take place there last year, but was pushed back to 2021 because of the pandemic. Our destination was Sunset Bay Resort on Dead Lake. An account of the bloody battle between the Sioux and the Chippewa in 1843 is how Dead Lake got its name. A sign near the boat launch tells the story, as told by Standing Buffalo. It's the night before the opener, so we're pan fishing right now with Randon Olson back there. Say hi, Randon.
Hi.
All right, what was your name, man?
Pete Terinskis. 2021, we're back, COVID.
Talk about that dark color during the spawn like that or post-spawn, Randon.
It's kind of like mallards, how they'll turn from molting. It's kind of the same thing. Once that spawn starts coming, all those hormones get rolling and the males will start to turn black.
I work for WCCO Radio, Minneapolis.
How's fishing?
Fantastic. I'll tell you what, walleye openers tomorrow, but this is about the best crappie fishing I've had in many, many years.
All right, Randon, well, thanks for having us out.
Yes, sir. It's going to be fun.
So we'll take a peek in here real quick. How's it been so far? What is your preferred method cleaning these crappies, Randon?
I love going over the ribs and then leave the skin attached, and then I'll just leave a little piece like that so you're legally going down the road with them.
Well, if you've ever wondered how a place called Sunset Bay gets its name, you're about to find out. Because in about 15 minutes, that is going to be fire in the sky with calm water. It doesn't get much better than that.
Growing up as a kid, my family and I went to resorts, and it was something my wife and I looked at about 30 plus years ago, but we were starting a family and economics didn't work out, and we put it off for a long time. But when the market crashed in 2008, my job changed quite a bit, and we came back to Minnesota and bought the resort. Fell in love with this one because of the layout and the nice beach, and it's the second largest lake in Otter Tail County, which attracted us also. And Otter Tail County has over 1,000 lakes, It's got 36 miles of shoreline and a lot of different structure that you can fish. A lot of different species in the lake. Black crappie, sunny, walleye, northern, and smallmouth bass are the predominant ones. We thought the name would turn some people off, you know, Dead Lake, but it's kind of a hidden gem, honestly. Being the second largest is nice because everybody goes to Otter Tail Lake versus Dead Lake, and people who find it, though, they come back all the time. Looking out every night from our shoreline, looking west, you can see gorgeous sunsets every night. We had a rain tonight and another good sunset coming right now.
Good morning from Dead Lake. Doesn't get much better than this, boys and girls. I've been out for openers here in Minnesota where there's been snow on the ground, ice on the lake. There's barely a ripple on the water. It's probably 42 degrees, but it's supposed to get up to about 72 today. So I've had people giving me a hard time that I'm showing sunsets and sunrises and birds gobbling and whatever, and where's the walleyes? I just lost one at the boat. I know nobody's gonna believe me because I don't have proof. Had him up to the boat and he popped off. With the clear water, high sun and calm conditions, the walleyes were tight-lipped. So we made the best of it, did some dog training. We introduced Tiny to dock jumping and brought her in the boat for the first time. We even let the old girl Mika have a little bit of fun too. Well, there it is. Our time in Otter Tail Lakes country for the Governor's Fishing Opener 2021. Erik, thanks for having us up there. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. I got chills, man. Watching that video, I got well, and so like I was saying how everything came together, right? Like you and Randon have you know each other, so you got to spend time with Randon, and then Adam Carter, like he wanted to fish with me. You know, that's what he told me anyways. And I was like, I don't think that's a great idea. But then he was able to get in the boat with you guys and to have you at Dead Lake, that was important. And the resort owners are right. That lake is super underlooked as far as the fishery goes or a destination goes. Between Otter Tail, Dead, and Star, and they're kind of all connected there, there's 25,000 acres of water just between those lakes. And that's so there's Otter Tail, and then there's Dead, and then if you go up one more, and then there's Star, and it, you put those three together, and they're 10 minutes apart between each of them. So great job on the video, man. I really appreciate that. And that's what. So I've been trying to explain what this weekend is all about. And it's about creating shared experiences. So you had a shared experience with Randon, you had a shared experience with Adam and his buddy. And then you have, and then creating memories, right? Like that you're going to remember, or hopefully you're going to remember that trip for a long time. And we had, I'm ballparking here, but 200 people, right? Whether they were media or elected officials or other invitees, the stories that I heard Saturday afternoon, and people texting me pictures of fish, and like everybody came away with the weekend, I hope, with a smile on their face and a good story to share. And when I talk about it being a success, that's what I mean. Is that, and the other thing that I would like to say, in your video, I think did a good job of describing it, was I wanted fishing to be the centerpiece. Right. I sometimes there's a thing called scope creep where it becomes about something else. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that we were able to make the 2021 Minnesota Governor's Fishing Opener about fishing, or at the very least about outdoor recreation. And yeah, there's the gals from WSI Sportswear. They were out, again, back, things coming together. I had two buddies, Jesse Tintis and Chad Smith, and I didn't have them lined up as boat hosts until the week before. And so I asked them, I'm like, can you help? And they're like, yep, we got the weekend open for you. And there was 5 gals from WSI Sportswear that were staying at Bonnie Beach Resort on Clitheroe Lake. And so I asked Jesse Tintis, I'm like, do you know anything about Clitheroe? He's like, well, we're fishing there tonight. So yeah, we know, you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't have planned Jesse Tintis and Chad Smith to spend the whole weekend with these 5 gals. Like, I couldn't have saw that coming. It just happened, and they caught oodles of crappies. They caught bass. They caught obviously some walleyes too. And there's literally 100 of those stories of people coming together, the things all coming together. They got out, went fishing. The folks that fished Otter Tail struggled, right? Like if they chose Otter Tail, and I hope that isn't a sign of the summer to come, but the folks that went on other lakes, they caught a lot of fish.
Well, it's funny how things can all fall into place like that. Sometimes things have a way of working out, and you can call it divine intervention. You can call it luck. You can also call it being prepared and doing your job. And when you do your job the right way, things have a tendency to work out. Maybe it's a combination of all three, but I had a great time, and I'm glad. And I'm a little guilty of taking fishing off the precedence just a little bit this weekend, just because the weather was so nice and it was fun to be out there, and there was a ton of wildlife, and the weather was perfect, and I had my dogs with, and I was staying at a new resort, checking out a new lake, and I had all this fancy camera gear that I got to take sunset pictures with and all that stuff. But I'm glad you talked about fishing being the priority, because this is the fishing opener. And I, without going on a long rant about the day and age that we're living in, so much, so many other things are getting the attention, and fishing and, and hunting to some extent, it's getting knocked down a little bit, or it's not as promoted as often. So I'm glad that you talked about fishing being a priority, and especially in Otter Tail Lakes country, when you got 1,000 lakes. I mean, the fishing opportunities are it's out of this world up there. So, hey, I caught a pile of fish. I'm not going to complain about it. We caught a pile of walleyes. What do you got here? Oh yeah. So there's some walleyes were caught, of course. We caught a pile of crappies on Friday with Randon and Adam there, and then on Saturday I caught more pike than I knew what to do with. And I was going to bring this up with you, and I wanted to interview these guys, and I meant to interview them, and we just didn't cross paths again at the resort, but I saw them on the lake. And I was fishing. It was midday on Saturday. I'd gone out early for crappies. I couldn't believe how light it was at 6 a.m., by the way. It felt like it was midday already at 6 a.m. on Saturday. It was so bright. And that lake was crystal clear. But I went out early, and then midday I switched over to crappies and tried to find some crappies up there. So I was trying some shallow water and some bays here and there. And all of a sudden I see this boat come rolling in. And they're like, hey, you're the guy with the cameras, right? Back at the resort. And I said, yeah, that's me. And they were staying 2 cabins down, and he said, well, what are you fishing for here? And I said, well, I'm fishing for crappies. I don't know why they have a southern accent all of a sudden. They weren't from the South.
Right. That's okay.
They said, what are you fishing for here? And I said, well, I'm trying to find some crappies. They're like, well, you're in the wrong spot. This is a pike spot here. I said, oh. And he goes, yeah, we're too short of our limit. And I said, oh, so you guys have 18 pike right now, and they said, yeah, we're going to keep our limit and cook up pike tonight, so if you're hungry, stop by, and we're going to fry up a bunch of northern pike, which, they weren't, like, I love eating northern pike, Eric, but generally I like to keep something, it's got to be that upper 20s before I really start thinking about keeping it, and they were keeping smaller pike, which was the whole point of that 10 pike per day limit, 10 pike per person limit, is to pull some of those small pike out of there. So my hat's off to these guys for keeping all those pike and cooking them up and eating them. I thought that was great.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, my brother-in-law and I have done that on Star Lake, right? So Star Lake, same regulations. And we had my boy and his boy with us. And I think we were trying to catch walleyes, and same deal. We said, you know what, we can keep 10, we put 20 pike in the live well, and they weren't giants. Obviously, they fell within the regulations, and we cleaned them up and fried them up and had a fish fry. So it's a good point. But again, back to you. I think you just so you know, Bret, I think you did a fantastic job of making fishing in the outdoors the centerpiece of your visit. So, and again, when I, our mission for this event, and I read this, we had 1,000 Zoom meetings, and I read this mission before at the beginning of every meeting, just to make sure that we stayed on task. Our mission was to highlight Otter Tail County's diverse outdoor recreation opportunities, our numerous lakes, and our welcoming communities. That was our mission. And I think we pulled it off, right? Like, we diverse outdoor wildlife watching is an outdoor recreation, right? Hiking and biking and paddling, those are all out, dog jumping, that's an outdoor recreation. And so I think we were able to give our guests an experience where they got to feel what it's like to, at least for a weekend, to live the good life in Otter Tail County.
I wish I would have been able to experience some of those other. Oh yeah, you got to talk about Willie and his guy. Hey, let's come back. Let's come back to that for 1 second, because I just want to say I wish I could have done some more of the events. I want to apologize to Lund, because I wanted to get over there for the Lund Boats tour, and Erik, I had my truck so full of stuff to get up there, and all my camera gear, all my fishing gear, my boat, and then loading up my 2 dogs is literally like loading up 2 toddlers. And, making sure they had snacks for the 2-hour ride. It was like I was pulling my hair out by the time I pulled out of my driveway. So I got on the road a little bit late, so I apologize for not making it to that tour. But as I was driving around, I was learning about some of these other kind of cool historical things. And just like the story of how Dead Lake got its name. If I would have had another day or two, I would have loved to have kind of dig into the history of, you have to think that it's something when you got a place like Battle Lake and then Dead Lake, you had to think there was some history there, and to learn a little bit more about that history would have been a really neat part of that story. So I tried to include it in there, and thankfully there was a sign that I could read from at the launch. But I get fascinated by all that historical, cultural stuff like that you find in some of these communities around the state.
Yeah, and we did a land acknowledgement at the opening ceremony to acknowledge that there is a significant Native history.
Mm-hmm.
Otter Tail Lake got its name because when I'm not an expert, so I don't know the tribes, but the natives would meet with the fur traders at the lake with the otter's tail, right? There's a strip of land, so that's how Otter Tail Lake got. So yeah, there's a significant Native history in our area, and it's always nice to acknowledge that others were here too, and still are. And so no, it's got there's 1,000 stories you could tell for sure.
Let's go back to Willie's experience on the opener, Erik.
Right.
Tell us about it.
So again, I'm going to go back to everything coming together, right? Like, this was not. I mean, eventually it became intentful, but we didn't set out to do this. But we had a couple of travel bloggers. And they're travel bloggers. They're not necessarily fishing bloggers. And my father-in-law, who is new to the sport of fishing, they have a place at East Silent Resort on East Silent Lake. And I knew my father-in-law was going to be up, and my mother-in-law. And so as we were looking for boat hosts, I asked my father-in-law if he would be a boat host. And then I told him, I said, it'll be you and Willie. And Willie's only 12, so I didn't know if he would step into his role or not. I didn't know if he would shy away from it. But the long story short, this couple met up with my in-laws and Willie Saturday morning, and they fished for 4 hours. And my father-in-law said that the gal asked Willie 1,000 questions, like literally, she just kept asking him questions, and he had 1,000 answers. And he stepped into the role, and he was a good host. And the final tally was Willie caught 8 fish and everybody else caught 0. So it just worked out perfectly. I had a pair of travel bloggers who don't know much about fishing, and I could put them at East Silent Lake Resort, which is an awesome resort, which my in-laws were already staying at, right? And then I had a kid and a grand, so they had a completely different experience, that kind of that family generational laid back, let's go for a pontoon ride and see if we can catch some fish. And that fit their style.
But I heard they missed more than they could count or something. Is that what I?
Well, he told them to say they something like, yeah, I don't know what it was, but he stepped into his role really, really well. Awesome. And the only, my grandpa, his grandpa, my father-in-law said the only question he struggled with, well, there was two of them. She asked him what his favorite lake was, and he's like, I'm not telling you that. It was so good job. He knows. And then she asked him, what else do you love about Otter Tail County other than fishing? And he kind of gave her a blank stare, like,
what else is there?
I don't know. What else is there? So, no, I was super glad. And shout out to my buddy, Tony Grosskreitz, because in the planning process, he's like, how are you going to get your family involved? And I was like, they're not necessarily from an all hands on deck, but just from, this is only going to happen. I mean, this is the last time I'm ever going to chair this thing. So how can we get the family involved to make them feel like it wasn't just dad working, we were all part of the same thing. And so Willie obviously was involved as a boat host and probably the youngest boat host ever. I don't know. We'll have to look through the record books, but co-boat host, to be completely honest. And then my wife was able to be a part of it, at the shore lunch on Saturday, and she helped me out. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off on,
I
for
saw
48 hours.
For 30 seconds there.
So
yeah,
exactly. I apologize, but
right.
So my wife was there, and then she was able to be part of the closing ceremony too. So it was, again, for as much as hand wringing and sleepless nights as we had leading up to it, I wouldn't change a thing. Like there's nothing, as I look back at it with hindsight, like there's nothing. And that staff right there, Marie's in the back right next to my boss, Nick. Marie, she worked so tirelessly and she stepped up so huge. Nicole Allum is there with Explore Minnesota. Rebecca Umland, Lori from Thumper Pond, the Thumper Pond staff stepped up. Shannon Terry, Gene Bowman from Visit Fergus Falls, and then Executive Director John Edmond from Explore Minnesota Tourism. Like, I said this, I think, in our last conversation. If there's anybody out there that has been a part of this planning process, kudos to you, because it is a very daunting task. But well worth it. And that, that'll be the next question, I'm sure, down the road is, was it worth it? Would you do it again? I wouldn't do it again in the short term, but I think it was absolutely worth it. I think, I'm going to beat this drum till the day I die, but we put you in a resort. We put those 5 gals in a resort. We put somebody in East Silent Resort. We had 20 some resorts spread out. We infused cash into the local economy that weekend immediately. And then hopefully, and I will say this, there's Erik Kep with the governor. Erik put the governor on fish, and Erik said he saw the governor get bit 4 times and they had one on, right? But the governor needs to come back and go fishing, and we can work on his hook set. That's what I was told, is we got to work on that hook set. So
we should have stuck around for a few more hours to keep fishing.
Well, there's that.
No, man. Go ahead, Erik.
Let me say this. He showed up Friday morning at 8:30 at the media row thing. He went to local businesses. He bought donuts. He did dozens of interviews. And then he went to the Lundboat factory tour. And so I had a reporter ask me if I was disappointed he was only here for such a short time. And I said, he wasn't here for a short time. He was here for 24 hours at least, and he went and did things and met people. He sat down with, so at Thumper Pond after the media row was over, he sat down. I might be misspeaking here, but he sat down and chatted with Otter Tail Power about, their needs and their desires. He sat down with some public health officials. Yeah, and by the way, I got to do some interviews too. I got to wear that hat again. So
You've done
yes,
that
he
before.
left a little. Yeah, I've done that before. He left a little earlier than anticipated, but I wouldn't say it was fair that he was only there for a short time. I will say this, and I'm not trying to be. He showed up, and there were others that did not. Let me just say that there were other people that were invited that chose not to come, and it doesn't matter which side of the aisle they're on, or we don't need to get into that. But he showed up, and I was grateful for that. The people that were there on Friday, the media, the locals, the whatever that were there on Friday, they got some quality sit down chat time with him. There was a guy who wrote a book, Bob Allen. He wrote a book, something walleye, Walter the Wily Walleye, or something like that. And he wasn't on the schedule. He wasn't supposed to, be part of the bit. But he had contacted me earlier in the week, and I'm like, well, you can come hang out. I can't guarantee, because he wanted to give the governor the book, and sure enough, that guy waited for 2.5 hours till he finally got his set, and then he got to have a moment with the governor and give him his book. So I think he was very gracious and open on Friday, and yeah, he left a little earlier than scheduled. But like I said, there were others who did not that chose not to attend, and why I can only guess.
Well, this conversation has come up with you and I, and this conversation has come up with a multitude of people throughout the weekend, that regardless of your side of the aisle, regardless of what you think of the governor or other politicians, I tend to lump a lot of politicians into one basket, regardless of what letter is next to their name. There's some good ones out there. But this event was about fishing, and this event was about the Otter Tail County community, and that's what it should have been. That's what the focus should have been on, and that's what I focused on while I was there. And I think it'll be back, Erik, and whether or not you want to chair it next time it comes back, I think I know exactly who will be chairing the event. Not only will he be chairing that event next time it comes on, but might have your job soon, and you're related to him.
Who?
Willie.
Okay. Yeah.
You had to know.
Well, I thought he's got a tip, a chair, and a chance. I've put him in guiding situations before, and he's kind of shied away from the responsibility of being a host. You know what I mean? And I was super proud that he stepped up and he played his role. He answered literally 1,000 questions, and then he caught fish. I mean, he wasn't trying to rub it in, but he just, he had to prove that it can be done. It's just a matter of putting the time in.
Sometimes as a guide, you have to do that. That's always the tough question when you're a guide. Do you fish? Do you not fish? And when your guests aren't catching or shooting, if you're a hunting guide, sometimes you have to show them that this is how you do it, and it is possible. There are fish down there. Sometimes that's the way it goes. But from the youngest boat host to the youngest event chair, I think we might see Willie down the line. Next time we have this conversation, that's what we'll be talking about.
I'd help him however I could, if that's what he chooses to do.
Would you tell him to do it, or would you tell him, nah, just don't do it? Don't do it, man.
Well, so okay, if you would have asked me that on Thursday night, I would have said, don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. But after now, and maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm biased. I have my own filter, right? I'm looking at through a certain lens. But now that we've done it, I would for sure do it again. Yeah, I would change a few things, but I don't think there was any major flaws. But if there's any host, if there's any community out there that's considering, should we, shouldn't we? Again, if the measure, it depends on what your measurement of success is. I don't want to burn up all of your tape here, but I had a buddy. Again, there's 100 different stories. I had a buddy, old time buddy. He came up. He was a boat host, and he had a guy in the boat that reminded him of his Uncle Lowell, who had passed away this summer, and he was fighting back tears. He told me, he's like, it's a good thing I had sunglasses on, because I was kind of wiping away tears once in a while, right? so again, that shared experience, that memory of that weekend, two people from completely different walks of life, random strangers came together, and you know, they started fishing at 7 a.m, and then they had to decide, should we go in for shore lunch or not? And the answer was, heck no, we're going to cave. You know, again, back to the fishing was the spotlight. They now have this, I don't know if it was emotional for the other guy, you know, but you know, there's a story. So if you're going to measure the success of the event on how many people are there, or how much media coverage you got, or, you know, things that fit on a spreadsheet, maybe not. If you're going to measure the event on success on how powerful of an experience did the attendees have, right? Like, I mean, I'm not saying it was powerful for you necessarily, but you had a good time. You had a good experience. You fished a new lake. Like, you'd never been to Dead Lake before, right?
No, I hadn't.
Let me ask you this. How many boats were on Dead Lake?
You know, there was boats. There was a guy on a jet ski playing really bad country music, really loud. I wasn't happy about. But there were fishermen, but there was only one time where I felt like a boat was in my way, and I was trolling shoreline, and he came rearing up and jumped right in front of me on that contour. And then, so as I'm trolling up to him, I'm like, all right, well, this is fishing. It's public body of water. Right. This happens, whatever. And then, so then I was trolling, and I went out of the way to go around him and then get back on the line. And as I got up around alongside of him, he went from drifting in towards the shoreline to trolling the same break that I was trolling, and was trolling right alongside me. And then I got frustrated, and it was right away on Saturday morning. And I was like, is this how my day is going to go? And I pulled my trolling motor up, and I put my big motor down, and I went off to a different part of the lake, and I marked a bunch of fish as soon as I went to a new spot, and I had that spot all to myself. And so I can't really complain about it, but yeah, I mean, there was plenty of spots to fish. There was guys definitely fishing there and fishing some of the spots. And I don't know if you saw in that video, it's kind of cool when I came in and was filming some of the sunset stuff. I had the drone up, and somebody went, regardless of how you feel about water recreation, skiers and wakeboards and stuff like that, I'm generally not a big fan of it. But this boat came out with 2 water skiers behind it, and the lake was like glass, and I just happened to have the drone up, and it was one of the coolest things watching that boat and those 2 skiers go across, you know, and creating this wake, you know, across glass. So it was a pretty neat experience.
Cool. Well, we're so grateful you were able to make it a part of your plans, and awesome job on the video. I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And Eric, if people want to learn more about how the Governor's Opener went, or just learn more about Otter Tail Lakes Country, what should they do?
They can find their inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com.
This has been the Finding Fins Fishing Podcast, part of the Sporting Journal Radio family. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts, or go to findingfins.com, and make sure to like our sponsors.
Did you know there are more than 1,000 lakes in Otter Tail County?
Yep, and I'm going to fish as many as I can. I'm an outdoorsy otter. Nothing beats a full day of fishing for me. The lakes of Otter Tail County give me plenty of options to lower my boat and snag the perfect catch. Not an outdoorsy otter? No problem. Otter Tail County has something for everyone. You just need to find your inner otter.
To find your inner otter, go to ottertaillakescountry.com.